Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, starring Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Kate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, Bernard Hill, Christopher Lee, and Billy Boyd, and directed by Peter Jackson. Now, I kind of had a rough history with this one because this is like I don't know. The movie, when I saw it the second time in theaters, I felt kind of bored. And I'll talk to you about why I did in this show. So let's get into it. Starts off with Frodo, returned by Elijah Wood, having a dream of Gandalf, returned by Ian McKellen, dying from a fall like he did in the last film. As a recap, it works so well, and we see the Fellowship is broken. And as we pick up with Frodo and Sam, returned by Sean Astin, getting lost in where to go to get to Mordor, the Mountain of Fire, they go in circles, and as they're asleep, they meet Gollum, played by Andy Serkis, and fight him before he gets the ring. And I'm liking their story as the first choice, and we get the least of it, which did upset me when I first saw this movie, and it'll upset me more in this viewing, even in this viewing. Merry and Pippin are captured by orcs. They're talking about the hobbits they're taking the hobbits, to Saruman the White, returned by Christopher Lee, and they manage to escape to the trees and getting a ride with Treebeard, voiced by John Rhys Davies. And their story is my least favorite because it gets kind of boring after a while, and some parts of it drag a bit. This movie does kind of drag, I am going to admit, for its 3-hour run. Meanwhile, Aragorn, returned by Viggo Mortensen, Legolas, returned by Orlando Bloom, and Gimli, returned by John Rhys Davies, going after the hobbits until they meet up with the new Gandalf the White. That's my second favorite story because Gimli makes me laugh at times throughout the movie. Eomer, played by Carl Urban, suspects Saruman is making the crimes happen until Wormtongue, played by Chucky himself, Brad Dourif, thinks Saruman is a friend and gets Eomer banished from Rohan by their king Theoden, played by Bernard Hill, who looks absolutely pale until Gandalf makes Theoden himself again. And I kind of like that idea of the story, but there's too many characters in this movie. I really like how we see Gandalf resurrected and explained by Ian McKellen, and his acting is tremendous in this movie. Is tremendous in my opinion. Gandalf gets King Theoden back to his normal self, and Wormtongue gets thrown out and banished with Saruman. And Eowyn, played by Miranda Otto, is happy about it, and I get the impression she's in love with Aragorn throughout the movie. Because I swear I forgot about Arwen, returned by Liv Tyler, is the one who's in love with him, because she's barely in this movie and is the weakest thing about this movie. But Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, along with Gandalf, fight the war against the orcs throughout the rest of the movie, which will be more exciting when we get to the end of this movie. But for now, I'm kind of bored at this point. I like Gollum in this movie. He's like a pet cat by chasing fish, and a puppy for bringing dead rabbits to eat. And I also like how he goes back and forth between his split personalities he was once a hobbit named Smeagol, and he is now which is the creature that he is. When I first saw this, I thought, who is he talking to? Because I was really lost at that point, and I didn't know what split personality was. But now I get it. He has a split personality, and I like that about Gollum. Frodo and Sam, with Gollum, get captured by Faramir, played by David Wyndham, and they torture Gollum, to find out why his brother Boromir is dead in the Fellowship of the Ring. And Faramir, I feel a little conflicted if I like his character or if I hate him as a character in this movie. He'll get better next week, I think, in my opinion. The orcs have a battle with Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli without Gandalf, but has an army with King Theoden, and the creatures the orcs are riding a sound something that sounds like a dog's. Maybe they are, I don't know, but and the fight is good until Aragorn falls down, a long way down, might I add, and they assume he's dead for a while, which will make me think this movie's pacing feels a tad bit off while Aragorn is dead, and this movie does kind of drag a bit, like I said before. Aragorn finds out Saruman's orc army is on the way to Rohan and warns the King Theoden about the army of orcs, and they call for the elves because Rohan have 300 men who are frightened, and they fight the war with was pretty exciting. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin get told Treebeard and his tree buddies that they aren't orcs, which did feel pretty good because earlier in the film, Treebeard thinks they're orcs. Gandalf brings Eomer to the war with King Theoden and kills all of the orcs, and Frodo, Sam, and Gollum get taken to Faramir's camp of men, and when Frodo says, "They're here," it feels like the orcs coming, felt like a ripoff of the original Poltergeist, and he almost gets captured by an orc, until Sam comes and saves him, which did feel a little weird because they're ripping off a movie from the 1980s, first of all. But I did like Gandalf and Eomer's rescue of killing off the orcs. Faramir lets Frodo and Sam and Gollum go, and Gollum leads the hobbits to Shelob, which we'll see next week. And that ending did get me on the edge of my seat, like I can't wait to watch The Return of the King. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.6 out of 10. Other than The Hobbit, which I'll talk about starting in 2 weeks, this is the weakest Lord of the Rings movie I've seen. And why? Because the pacing is off, they didn't focus on Frodo and Sam as much, but I enjoy the fights, the characters, the acting, and I'm looking forward to next week. So I will be back next week with Return to the King, and until next time, the Middle Earth has ended.